see what comes on. It says we're broadcasting. The aspect, I don't know, maybe it's my monitor size, but the aspect ratio of the web app is really kind of skewy.
I mean, it's pretty. It basically fits the entirety of the screen for me. So unless you minimize, like you reduce the ratio of your box.
Do you have two monitors?
No, I'm just running on my laptop. So
okay, I'm running out of Chrome and two monitors.
That's what I do when it's time to watch games on the black box.
Right. And then I will let's put this link on Facebook.
Yeah.
FRA. There we go. Sent that. Share.
Do you use TweetDeck?
TweetDeck?
Yeah.
I have in the past.
Yeah, I was it Steve Daniels showed it to me, and it's really helpful, but a little bit of information overload when you're trying to just get through stuff real quick. So that was my only. I think I use it about like half the time when I'm using it on my desktop. So
there we go. All right. So we're at 3 minutes out. We're ready to roll. I always trip out like you notice how like you're like offset on video.
find out.
See the live control room. Stream status okay. Backup stream is good.
All right.
The only thing that I don't like about this is it doesn't let you set the bit rate.
Yeah.
That's all right. It will be okay. Let's see.
There we go.
Open this up. So I'll have my stats in front of me. All right, we're on in a minute.
Okay.
Well, actually, we're technically on now.
Oh, we've been on.
Right.
Let's look at that. Look at this. All right. And all right. Put this.
One thing I don't like about I like the way the stats interface looks, the GUI, but it's not very analyst friendly.
No, for the most part, it's really there. It's kind of interesting to see where rugby is with stats, because I mean, most American sports, baseball being the worst of the big three, like there's stats for everything. They create new stats, war, whip, all that funny stuff. I think war wins above replacement is going to start making its way into football, and it's going to be a really weird usage of statistics. I like this because it gives me a better idea. The stat sheet that Jeremy Castro made that Grant and a few other people was using, I think you got sent it. That really helps me.
Yes, it does.
If I'm going to chart, I think as a writer and I want to watch more of the game than chart the game. So it's nice to be given the statistics. Whereas, I mean, I've done that job way back in the day as a writer. Hey, guess what? This is high school football. They don't give you stats, so you got to chart while you're on the field. So, but this is nice. It helps me out a lot more. And the difference is that GPS runs everything, whereas I don't think they're using GPS in football. They might be using it in soccer in the United States, but I don't think they're running GPS at all in the NFL.
Makes sense.
And it would probably help them for recovery because most of the GPS stuff is when in practice, they wear GPS and they pair it with heart rate monitors so they can really track to, the nth degree the work rate of a player and then shut them down, multiple days a week if they have to, for, guys like Haskell who are 36 and somehow make it onto the Lions and still play 10 England matches a year. He'll be shut down for a lot of practice, just like it is in the NFL and probably is in, other sports, but they just go by, hey, you're an old guy. You don't really need to be out here, rather than, hey, this guy's work rate is crazy. We should probably slow him down.
So I guess we'll get started, folks. Hey, Tosan Touche Tanwe here with the Stro Bro, Mr. Castro. We're here previewing the semifinals for the Women's World Cup 2017. France, England, the USA, and New Zealand. I guess I'll start just to say, for whatever controversy has been around, talking about the format, only having 12 teams, et cetera, et cetera. Well, here we are at the knockout phases. So this is where we are. And you can talk about who should be there, who shouldn't be there. But right now, these are the 4. And for what it's worth, these 4 present some interesting matchups. And some are proceeding a bit on reputation, but where I come from, reputation ain't never won nothing. So we'll talk about the matchups and how they work. And I think some people are overlooking actually 2 teams. Of course, we know one team that's being overlooked. I think people are overlooking a second one, and we both wear the same colors. And I have an angle as to why people should actually pay attention, especially those who are familiar with what happened in 2014. But I'll pass on to you, Mr. Castro.
Thanks, Tosan. Well, being the format, it hasn't changed since 1991. That's my real beef. Right. That women's rugby has grown. And I've got into some discussions with some people, and they're like, well, you don't want to see more of these 0 to 121 matches. I'm like, you're not going to see those, because if the next 4, if you do what you do and you do the weird Rugby World Cup qualifying process, like, you're talking no teams below Hong Kong.
Right.
And you're probably talking at least the 3 teams in front of Japan, and then a team in between Hong Kong and Japan showing up.
Right.
So South Africa, athletes. Scotland, they have athletes. So you're not really going to have those crazy score lines unless it's just, that day. Because if it's the number 1 versus the number 24, what do I expect? That's
what it's supposed to happen.
So, I mean, I had no beef with that score.
No, I didn't either. I think that people get a little bit too up in arms about parity, and when in reality, I mean, the Men's World Cup has minnows too. So it's not like I feel that we're losing anything. The biggest part of the World Cup, it's the crown jewel of the 15s competition for anybody who plays rugby on this planet. And so that in itself, basically as a matter of national pride and representation, is going to carry a sentiment that if they have qualified and they're there, they're going to play, and there's going to be a following, and there's going to be competition. There's going to be value there. Okay. I mean, I've seen plenty of teams get beat by dang near 70 in the Men's World Cup. It's not something that it moves me. So that's why I thought it was always an odd argument to make. The other portion is those people that are sort of in that 13 to 17, 18 spot, right? So now you actually have a pretty legitimate shot of going. So that development it has an easier business case.
Yeah.
Where it's like, okay, I get to show up to this thing and actually have a decent number of matches where we show well, because now you have 4 pools of 4. So you end up with 3 pool matches. And then you can have, let's say, your place out match, however you want to do that at the end of the thing. Because that's something that the men's doesn't have. I mean, you go to the knockouts, and then those are your remaining matches. But here we actually have kind of like a plate, and it's kind of like a more 7 style to make sure people get more matches.
I would say it's more old school.
Right.
Like that's how things used to be done. They don't really do it a lot now. I think, why not? Like, why not? Because then, hey, all these countries that are scrapping, like we're apparently scrapping for resources, to send our women's to the World Cup just to fund their women's program. There's 4 more spots, and some of these countries basically said we're not going to attempt to qualify because we don't believe in the current system. And that was basically South Africa. South Africa could have qualified. They were like, you know what, we don't believe really in this qualifications process.
Mm-hmm.
So what we're going to do is we're going to redo our entire high performance pathway. Because they took a long look and they said, where are we going to land?
Mm-hmm.
You know, we're ranked, like, I think they were at 11th or something.
Mm-hmm.
And South Africa, you're talking about one of the heartlands of rugby when it comes to certain people, but their union wants to win. So they said, hey, we're going to redo this and we'll see you in, 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So that's respectable. They wanted to do that. I'm good with it. There's only 12 spots. So, and the way the qualifications process is relatively convoluted, because guess what? We were an auto qualifier from last World Cup.
Yeah.
So we just got it because we placed somewhere 3 years ago, and our team is nowhere near the same. And
the roster's night and day.
If we had to qualify, if you look at who we played, it would have been a bit rough. But our girls, based on the rules, our girls took care of it, and they've shown, the new team has shown what they can do against, top flight competition. I look at this sometimes from a bettor's perspective, but I don't really bet that much because I like my money. Right. But the spread was 27. Mm-hmm. And we covered. The spread at the end of the game was 21. Mm-hmm. So what does that say? We outperformed by a try plus, which is great. And it showed more, I think, to our women that if they put it together, they can compete. And they started to compete, in the back half.
They won the second half.
A back half of the first half, they started to compete. And then in the second half, it was a completely different game. Yeah. And some people can say it was like fresh legs, but they put in all their subs too.
Absolutely.
So it was fresh legs on fresh legs, and we went out and competed, and we got the time we needed, because guess what? The girls knew what was up. They knew they had to get a bonus point or a win, and they did their job.
Well, I think there's a lot to say about, in terms of it's like watching that game. You kind of get the feeling that if it was 15 minutes longer, it might have got really interesting.
I think if it was 15 minutes longer, I don't think we would have pulled it out. But I'm thinking 10 points, maybe less.
Because there was a lot of momentum.
Because we were pushing. We were pushing the ball. And they were on their back heel. I think they just had they would have had a big enough of a cushion they would have been able to eke it out, and they would have gone into the locker room saying, praise him.
Right. It'd be one of those barn burners, 46-43 sort of, 38, or like the Highlanders match earlier this year, where it was incredible rugby.
That was a fun one.
Yeah, man. But I think one thing about that I guess we can only dwell on it because we got matches in the forward. But if you think about it, that game was defined by 15 minutes in the first half.
Yeah.
10-minute card, 2 minutes before, 2 minutes after.
Yeah.
And that's now save that where a little bit more experience, a little bit more battle hardened, like mentally, especially in our forwards, where we can now turn momentum. We've all been on those teams where we were playing and there's bleeding, right? But there's an ability to stop the bleeding. And there's sort of certain people we look to on the side that will do that. I think we're still figuring out who those people are on our team, especially in the forwards. I mean, we have a lot of good young forwards, and I think that's going to be the next step. This is like World Cup after this. We're going to have a better sense of who those people are. I think Sarah Parsons is one. She's
a ridiculous player. Based on watching her the first two matches, like, I am not a talented runner. I take the ball and I see contact, and that's the way how she how she was running. And then in the match against England, I don't know what the switch was, but she flipped the switch and she hit the open field. And it's like the talent that she has as a runner was apparent.
Oh, absolutely. She's great in the open space.
And maybe it was just who we played and the way they played defense that she wasn't really able to achieve the open field. But when she got it,
she was playing the basher role.
I was really impressed when she got into the open field. So I think if she maintains her seed contact, run people over, and then hit the hole, we could see a different, more complete player. But she's definitely got all the pieces. I wasn't expecting that because I hadn't seen her a lot prior to the Can-Am series back in April and March.
Right, and I think that's something that also kind of hamstrung us a bit is we didn't really get a chance to see much of anyone play together. So we comparing anyone to anyone was almost basically throwing darts. How the combinations were going to work, who was going to turn up healthy in time for camp and get through camp, and then you end up with your match day 23. There was so much going on there.
That was so. Yeah, I think we should get into the Red Roses versus France Féminines.
Yes. So for me, this is when I was mentioning people overlooked. I think France is being overlooked. And the reason being, people forgot what happened in 2014. They were a conversion kick away from tying that up in its extra time. And it would have they had kind of like we had at the end of the England match. They had all the momentum in that match. Sandrine Agricole, she uncharacteristically missed a conversion. She was well on her way to being MVP of the entire woman of the tournament for 2014 that year. I mean, she still was the dream team at 10. Given that's how well she played. One conversion. So we have some old folks on there. Safi Ndaye, Kumba Diallo, Marjorie Mayon's now playing 6 instead of 12. That remember that. There's a bitter taste in their mouth. They remember this.
Oh no, I look at Marjorie Mayon's and she does not look that old.
Exactly.
Most of the French women, I mean, they've got some really young girls, but they're in shape. Age has not crept on them at all.
Well, yeah, I mean, they were kind of the first to really jump into this professional thing. So when they, I guess, what's his name from? I can't remember who said it. Was Montpellier or Toulon? I can't remember. One of the clubs saying like, "Look, we're gonna start investing in this, and these women can be professional."
Montpellier and Toulon both have some pretty intense women's programs,
right? And so I think the reason when I say old timers, I feel that we've been watching them for a while, even though they are young. And I think that's one of those things. You have that many people with that much World Cup experience that have that feeling of how close they were. They went on to beat Ireland to take third. That's something that's going to be nobody can take for granted. I know England's not because they see each other probably more than anybody else in rugby. France and England play each other all the time, but they're not going to sneak up on each other. But I think we're going to be in for quite a competition. It's going to be intense.
I think for me, I mean, I look at Mignon. She was rested. I think their second match, she wasn't even on the roster. One of the first two matches, she wasn't even on the roster. She is, I mean, the matchup versus Cocaine, however you say Amy's last name. I am not British, so I don't know. Cocaine is a very physical runner, and she'll run over people. But if you watch Mignon, she's an enforcer, and she's one of the older hands on this team.
Yes,
so I think
it's her fourth World Cup.
Yeah, so she's also a very talented runner. They have different styles, but she hits, and she hits hard. So the up front matchup is going to be interesting. But the only change for this team was at 7.
Mm-hmm.
And that was Romain Ménager is not even on the team, on the squad.
And I was wondering if she had come off injured or what the deal was.
She was messed up, and she was on for what felt like 20 minutes after this match. Like, she either got cleated or something, but they wrapped her thigh pretty big, and then she kept playing for like 15, 20 minutes. So I could definitely see why she's not there. But Julie Henry, I mean, you're not losing anything. So I mean, it's just that kind of sucks that this very young flanker she is a twin.
Mm-hmm.
They're basically the future at flank for France. Her sister wasn't selected, but I mean, they both play open side. Like, they're both natural open side flankers. So craziness, but you're not really losing much. And it's going to be, the front line is an interesting matchup because of the way they run. But I would say that the French front row is leaner, and they play a little, I would say they play more Southern Hemisphere style than than the Red Roses. The Red Roses play this very bruising style up front. I mean, they've got the fitness, but it's just different. And, to non-rugby folks, I'm just figuring all this stuff out. There's just a more fluid way, but they both play interesting and very awesome styles of rugby. But so that was like the biggest one for me was Julie Henry. I mean, she plays very well. I looked at the line. The line is a penalty. It's 3 points for England. So at least the bettors are not sleeping on France.
Right.
I think a lot of people are sleeping on France, but the bettors are not.
All right. Well, the people that know these things that have, a few hundred thousand euros involved in this, they're probably gonna do their research, like we have. And I think that the biggest difference between France's and England's pack is that England's pack is looking to create more space and take space. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
The French, these women run with the ball, and they carry, they pass, a great example, Safi Ndiaye, right? So carries, tackles, passes, she did everything. And when she wants to be, she's the best bruiser in this, but she doesn't have to be. She does what her team needs her to do. I think I guess the best, for lack of a better term, it's very French. It's very French rugby. They like skilled players. And I think that, not to say that England's players aren't skilled, but I think that England is more of a structured forward side. They consolidate. They do the work together and do it well. Not to say that France doesn't do those. They don't do those things very well. Their maul is ridiculous. They're one of the best scrums in the world. But the French game is, they love to scrum, but they're scrumming to get the ball in the loose. And move it and play in space, and then get a lot of Noose and Amadi and those folks scoring.
So one thing you would see against I saw against Ireland. I mean, they had this ball like for 10 minutes. It was in the last 10 minutes. I felt it was between the 5 meter and the try line the entire time. So they were going to score anyways. But just how suffocating this defense was. But during the Ireland match, it's very interesting because they basically, every time they mauled, they just gained ground. And it's not really a difference because both England and France maul extremely efficiently, and they basically score. I would say it's almost automatic. So there's a matchup right there. Both very efficient mauls. who's going to win that fight, who's going to stop the maul, who's going to hold the other maul in place and make sure the ball gets passed out.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one thing I found interesting because they're just extremely efficient. Another, I think a player that's really gonna, for me, could be a game changer because, and everyone knows who she is. Is it Yana Rivlin? She can score. I mean, yes, she's a scrum half, but she is. It's very. I'd say it's very different with, say, Devin O'Shani. She gets the ball out, like she offloads, like she'll run and she gets the ball out perfectly. Whereas Rivlin she wants to run the ball a lot more than I would say a lot of these other scrum halves out there, except maybe who is it for New Zealand? Kendra Coxedge.
Mm-hmm.
So those would be based on who I've seen, the most ball talented scrum halves for me. They just run it.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, their passing skills are good, but I would say the running skills are much different compared to Natasha Hunt or Devin O'Shani's passing skills.
Well, and I think we kind of talk about what their systems demand of them, and I think that might be the kind of the difference there. I think knowing Pete, he's known for scrum halves. Penn State has been churning out international scrum halves as long as I've been playing, much longer than I've been playing rugby. And as long as I've known him, he's probably responsible for about 6 or 7 since I've been involved with this. So the expectation, there's a definite expectation of what a scrum half does for him. Now for England, I'm sure it's probably something quite similar. The French, though, I think they work very hard to pin people around the fringes. And I think that the scrum half's role in their system is more aggressive with ball in hand. I'm thinking more of along the lines of somebody like a Nana Vessi, who her job was really defending around the fringes and moving and keeping the forwards and everything moving forward to create space for moving it wide, versus creating the space with the perfect on-time pass at distance. That's just something that I observe. It could be dead ass wrong, but it's just something that, from what I've seen, comparing one thing to the other, that's the best I could pull from it. For France, I'm going to be interested in the penalty count, because this is going to be a hotly contested scrum. So there's going to be a lot of jockeying, trying to figure out how much space they can win, where they can get competitive advantages. I'm looking back at and speaking of competitive advantages, looking back at the stats for France versus Ireland. Do you know that France made 200 tackles?
Yeah, that's what put I forget who it was, but 2 of their players into the top 20 of tacklers for the tournament, which is impressive,
right?
But B kind of weird, because tackle rates, depending on what the matchup is. I mean, the only other one that was kind of like that made sense was when the Hong Kong versus New Zealand match, the New Zealand's tackle rate was ridiculous. Like, A, they had the most tackles. B, they put up 121 points. So that was interesting, and it makes me wonder about some of their tackling. But I mean, they went out there and they crushed 2 teams, and then they played a tough one against Ireland. So I would say that's interesting. I would say that it also points to, you have individuals that are more, I wouldn't say prone, but you have certain players that are going to tackle more.
Oh, yeah.
Others. So that would be a weakness that the Roses could definitely attack is those two. Let me see who it is.
Well, I'll tell you, Safi and Naya had 28 tackles.
Wow. If you told me that yesterday, I would have.
28. She made 20 passes.
That's
she was in everything. And that's why when I look back, and I had to double take when I looked at these stats when I read that, because it showed you how quietly she did it.
Yeah, because I didn't. I mean, to be honest, Safi and Naya was on the field, but I couldn't tell you she did a lot.
She had a forwards game. She was at the bottom of everything, so we didn't know what was going on.
Oh my!
And it shows you that why these tracking stats this way is very important. They may not have it perfect. There's some things I would like to see that will tell the story of the matches better. Yeah. In the coaches group, I post these stats without the score line and the teams, and I want people to try and guess what actually happened.
Yeah. So was it the two? It's really a tie from 14 to 17. Marjorie Mayans and Safi and Naya both average 42 tackles per match. That's impressive especially with their first two matches and how crushing they were over Japan.
Mm-hmm. Well, Japan competed well. I think that if you look at the stats for that game, I think that Japan just didn't finish all that well. They competed in spurts and really tested France, but France has finishing speed, and that's the one big thing that they can finish. They have three of their backs can finish from the 22. That's one thing that Japan themselves just they have no answer for yet. They don't have burners yet.
Yeah, and that's one thing I saw. Say with Italy, with the way they played defense, they just had no scoring threat.
Right.
So Japan felt like that throughout most of their matches, except for I felt that it really wasn't much. But who did? Let me see. They went out there, man. That Australia match, this is where you're looking at this, and they played Ireland and Australia. Those were some wild matches. What I saw from Australia is a lot of selection issues. They left. We brought a ton of sevens talent to this. To this thing. We've got Cheta Emba, Nicole Heverland, Naya Tapper, Alev Kelter. They're all, our sevens is sprinkled throughout this whole thing, and they had two on their team, and they didn't bring what I felt were their best athletes to put in their back line, because Charlotte Kaslick and a bunch of the other girls, they just started camp and they were doing vacation. So,
well, one thing I think when Elia Green got surgery, she got shoulder surgery, and I was really looking forward to see if she made the crossover to 15s, because she would be a dynamite 15s wing as well. And I think that Mahalia Murphy has been doing her thing. She showed that she's more than a she's one of the to me she's one of the top wings at the World Cup. I think that Australia was just a bit unlucky in terms of their pool. Close game with Ireland, dropped that, missed I think 3 kicks. That kind of put them into sort of that spiral of I can't get out of the muck. So now the best they could do was hope to take on an extremely physical France side. And France was France. They beat you up and ran past you.
Yeah, that was not really fun. So that that just shows you really. I mean, yeah, it's 12 teams, and yeah, the 13th ranked team in the world went up against some top fivers, and at the time, and it's still the parity is there between 5 and 24 for the most part. But if you're in the top 4, you're going to run over people.
Yeah.
So that's where what you see with France is they get the ball out, but they're really talented runners. Whereas I think you look at England, they like to enforce with their pack, and as you said, create space up front. And really, other than Cockayne up front, you have what was this? Alex Matthews and Tamara Taylor are really the only other what I would say most talented of their ball runners up front. Tamara Taylor and Alex Matthews they're dirty.
Yeah, they're good.
And then Sarah Hunter, their captain, she's her IQ is.
She's the captain of England.
All I'm just saying is
come on now.
She's so her just
might know a little something.
as I don't expect too many 8-men to be captains. I expect I like to. My 8-man is Jordan Gray, Cam Dolan types that just go out and just hit people.
Yeah,
they just
go out there and focus on playing. That's like Safi and Dai. She's not the captain, but she leads by play.
Yeah. So that's really what I expect. Go out and lead with your work rate, and that's what I usually see with an 8-man. But just the same, I never expected a hooker to be a captain. And then I saw Howard for Australia was captain for a very long time.
Yeah,
and
and then there was Keith Wood. Yeah. There have actually been some very good hook captains. John Smith for South Africa. But we're talking about the elite level. At the elite level, it becomes a little bit more about the tradition of the country and things like that. Yeah. Before that, I think it was a lot of lock captains, right? Eels, Matt Field, Bothwick, those folks. When we think about it, Paul O'Connell. We think in those terms, but in the women's game, I don't think it really ever took like that. I actually the person who taught my when I got my second certification coaching, Nancy Fitz. So she was one of the U.S. captains. I believe she was playing lock when she played for the U.S. and she was U.S. captain. But since then, I don't know if we've really had any locks that were captain, which is kind of interesting. We've kind of been over. We had Kate Daly was an 8, was captain at 8. She got injured, then they passed it on. I can't remember who took over for her. I think Kimber actually took over. I can't remember. And I do not remember who was captain before that. Somebody at home, anybody, let me know. I'd like to see what that was.
I would say I'm not the encyclopedia on women's rugby. It was my first test. I went down to San Diego to watch the Can-Am series, and so I am all in on women's rugby. But I would say I'm 4 years in, and 2 years into being obsessed with the men's Eagles, and a year into being all ready to go for the women's game. So
excellent. Hey, you got to start somewhere, man. And in the 2 episodes of our Rugby 1v1 that I've had, I spoke to Naya Tapper and I spoke with Magali Harvey. They both said the same exact thing, not having talked to each other. We need to talk about women's rugby. I asked them, what do you need from me? Right? And how can I support you? Well, you got the whole everybody that's listening. And they both said basically the same thing. And I think so whether you started it a week ago, like a lot of people who are going to be watching this are, or you were who started earlier because you said, hey, you know what? They rock the crest too, so we need to know what's up.
Yeah, I saw something. People complain and they say what they want about women's rugby. What I saw out there was our women are their technical skills, I would say, are better than our men. The difference is athleticism and speed. And they're actually not that much slower.
Well, that's what I want to say. The other part, like in terms of comparing speed and this, that, and the other, whatever. Were you entertained? That's the question.
I was. I mean, when it comes to certain sports, I don't get entertained by the opposite gender. Like, just because, I mean, you play basketball, it's just so much faster with the men.
It's a different style.
Yeah. And like another women's sport that I really like watching, women's softball. Like, it's just different and it's fast.
Well, it's its own thing. No one plays softball like women do in the United States.
Yeah. So, I mean, so there I was entertained. And women's rugby, like, I went out there, just to support, the girls. Like, without knowing, much more than like the sevens girls that I like follow from the series and stuff and support them. But I was entertained by the style of rugby, more so from the Canadians, because the second match wasn't really that fun. But the effort's unquestionable. Like, our girls, and you look at there was no team in this World Cup, and we're at the World Cup, so you better be putting in effort. There was no team that didn't display hustle.
True. No, true indeed. And not to stop your shine or anything. I know, because I have a lot of women that follow the Vile Rugby stuff. One thing, I have a challenge for everybody who comes on with me. Let's try to use the word women and not girls. Because I've been told that more than once. Usually it's a message to me, like kind of saying, that type of thing. So if they reach out to me about it, I always say I'll let people know. All right, they mean no harm. We mean no harm. But like I said, I tell them, look, I'm here for y'all. So if you need something from me, you ask me.
Our women and our ladies, because some of them don't want to be called ladies. I don't know why.
Fair enough. I'm saying it is what it is,
But our women's Eagles, like they won me over in one match. So,
and it's something, and I'll tell you what, like, I know some of them personally, which is one thing, but this is a team that, okay, we pull this off, and we're in the cup, and we're in the cup final. This is a team that personality-wise people can get behind. They are they represent America. Like, when you look at the U.S., I see America on this team. Oh, yeah. I see some of everyone. And if you look at the colleges they all went to and the hometowns, I mean, we have a player from Alaska. We have everything covered, So, it's a wonderful thing. And they play great. They play for each other. You can see it. That's an important thing. We've all been on teams where it's just really kind of more of a select side. You're there to do the job, get it done, and it's professional. It's all well done, played very well, cool. But now these women are playing for each other, and that turns up in support situations. That turns up in that sort of like the 50-minute slump where you got to pick it up and get your second wind and get there. You don't want to leave your mate hanging. It's all there, but I think we owe them to talk about the New Zealand match in a bit more technical terms, especially for the folks at home, beyond sort of the intangibles, because I don't back teams I don't believe can win, and I believe the U.S. can win.
I think I looked at that's another line now going. I mean, to really. I want to just say three things for England. The one that concerned me for them was when Skerritt came in on their first match against Spain, and she was missing conversions. They missed both her and I forget who she replaced in the second half of their first match against Spain. Both her and the girl she replaced she replaced at outside center, missed every single conversion.
Wasn't that something?
Against Spain. And then
I was kind of like, whoa, what is going on?
I don't know if it was Scarrett who kicked, but I think they made a penalty kick against Italy, and they left 20 points off the board again in that match. In the match against us, Scarrett missed the penalty of the first chance they had a chance to score. They had a penalty. She missed it, went wide, and I was thinking, well, if she does this, they leave 20 points on the board. It's different. Like, we can play this. But she found her leg. So if
I think we gave it to her. I think we could have put her, if we put more pressure on England early. That's where no disrespect to Emily Scarrett. She's a professional. She's been around playing this game for a minute too, at the highest level that anyone can play. But the human element of this game is a real thing, where we see it in basketball with people shooting clutch free throws, that type of thing. It's not unfounded that when confidence and form that are tied together dip. And I actually was trying to get a sense of some aggregate statistics on conversions to say, okay, is this person performing above average? I just ran out of time. It's just, the coding for this, I don't have. If they did it in tables, it'd be a lot easier. But, I don't have time to write Python code.
They don't seem to be looking like for misconversions but I think you're right there. I think I definitely look at, I don't think she was uncomfortable versus Spain and Italy, but I think she found her boot because she got really comfortable. And France, if France can make her uncomfortable early, it's the spread's at 3, and I think it's
interesting, right?
It's already game on, but if they take her boot away, then France can win by 10.
Well, sure, and I think that the key will be how well the forwards battle is won. Now, not just in terms of the physical crash bang, but penalty count. How effective are the packs going to be at the breakdown? That's going to be in the key areas because there's going to be contesting. There's going to be nerves. There's going to be some intensity. There's some women with some tempers. So let's see what plays out. But I think that on the flip side, it's kind of the same thing that I'm saying for my keys for a strong USA performance. One of those is make New Zealand uncomfortable. Don't let them have rucks. Don't let them have space. Don't let them have easy passes. Don't do what I call token tackles, where it's like, okay, this person, I have them wrapped up. It's just going to come. It's once they're wrapped up, their momentum will stop. It'll come down. We want to win inches here. We're going to use all 23 of our bodies. So there's nothing to leave on the pitch because what are you going to leave it for? So we want as many small victories, many victories in moments. I don't know if you saw the thing I posted. There's no moment too big for any of you. And I think of it not as a game of inches because that's football. This is a possession game. This is a game of moments. So now, how many good moments can we string together? How many defining disruptive moments can we have when things are going against us? Right? How many can we win? Can we win against the throw? Can we create mistakes in a team that's going to look to make long passes? Maybe throw a pick. These type of things, to be hungry for opportunity, so hungry for that opportunity that when you see the sniff of it, you're already communicating it to the 3 people around you because you want them to eat too. That's what, and it's not very technical. I can talk defensive alignment. I can talk timing. I can talk overall philosophy of attack, number of phases. How much space do we need to create before we move it? But let's get down to the really simple portion first, which is if we need to win a large percentage of the small battles. And some of them won't be measurable on the stat sheet. The stat sheet doesn't track positive tackles here. But I guarantee you that if we have, let's say, 8 positive tackles, 4 of them are counter rucks that we turn over. That's 4 turnovers, 2 tries. Rule of 50%, right? That's about as technical as I want to get for right now. But like, that's not as technical a thing as one would think. It's just that people don't think of it in those terms. That we want to get as much of what we can take as we can. Then keep as much of what is ours on top of that, which is our possession, our set pieces, which at scrum time, we still got to figure out the body height deal, which that's something that's a concern for me. I mean, I'm a loose head, so this is something that I watch very closely, and I'm actually in my youth, I was a brute scrummager, but I'm a very technical scrummager in terms of how I've studied it. And we've really put our 8, Jordan Gray, in some really tough situations. She's been making miracles at the back. At very tough situations. Our locks have been working very hard. They're driving out of body profile. It's just people don't seem comfortable. And when you look at the opposing scrums, even scrums that we defeated teams handily, they seemed a bit more consolidated than we were. We would have good scrums, and then we'd have one marginal, then one, oh my God, what just happened? Type of situation. And that's reps. That's comfort. Everybody comes from different places with different scrummaging systems, trying to figure out how to secure the ball. Thankfully, New Zealand is a pretty decent scrum. They're not the best scrum that we would face. I think England's scrum was a bit better. But I think that we're really going to, in terms of, we have a slimmer margin for error with New Zealand than we do with the England forwards, if that makes sense.
Yes, I think that if I was going to say the most technically sound team in this, like on the individual skill level, is New Zealand. Like, sure. If you give them something
1 through 23,
if you give them something, you're going to lose every time, because we saw, if you look at the Canada stat sheet, possession was 50-50 total.
Territory wasn't crazy. It was about something
territory
similar.
Wasn't crazy, but 50-50 total. But then you look at, say, meters made. The only difference is meters made is 200. So 48-5. Does that make sense? Like, there's 200 more meters made, and they put up 48-5. What that says is, like, to me, looking at that match, they just ate. They didn't.
Right, exactly. You see what I mean?
And on their pure offensive possessions, it didn't seem that they were wholly successful. I would say about 60% of the time, like maybe even 65, approaching 70. Like their scoring came off of Canada's mistakes. Yeah, like that's what I saw. Like that's what the stat sheet tells me, but that's what I saw, which was impressive. Because during their June series, which had Australia, New Zealand, Canada, and England, which England won, but New Zealand took second, they only beat Canada by 13 in that series. Like, that was like, you look at that match and you look at the stat sheet, and it's like, this is a fight. And this was a fight, except Canada made every mistake, and New Zealand scored on every mistake that Canada made.
Yep.
And that's what
I pulled it up just so the folks at home have a frame of reference. Territory, 61% to New Zealand. Possession was dead 50-50. Dead 50-50. And the telling thing is 9 turnovers. They didn't even, to tell you how crazy this is, New Zealand didn't even win the most turnovers. Canada won 2 more turnovers than New Zealand did.
that's the impressive stat,
isn't it? Like
they won 2 more turnovers and scored on none of them.
And they missed more tackles than Canada did. How about that?
That's interesting. So that gives me, I wouldn't say it gives me hope, because I mean, all bets are off. We're in the semifinals, but it gives me, it's like if we do the film study right, we can see the gaps.
Yeah.
And what that says to me is, hey, Canada was number 4 and New Zealand was number 2, and they went out there. They actually didn't have their best game, but they put Canada into one of their worst games in probably the last couple of years. So if we play well, we need to play really well. But if we do what we need to do and we find the gaps, because that clearly shows that in their last match, their last outing, that the opportunity is there to be seized. To achieve victory. The one thing that we have to do is to hold on to the ball. Like that's the one. I to be honest, that's if we reduce, like we don't gang tackle that much, but if we can do a lot of solo tackling that are made, not missed, I think that provides the range for our bigger, like our bigger range players to not have to reinforce sections. So Emba, I mean, you've heard me say it. I wish she was playing at outside center, because her range and Kelter's range really complement each other. They can play on the entire field if they're that close to the ball. And you know,
I mean, they'll always be over the gain line too.
And the way they hit is like they hit hard and they're always around the ball. So for me, I would put Emba at 13, because that gives you a different powerful aspect than having her in the back. Although, like I said, she would be all over the ball at 13. She's all over the ball now. So her range is still being seen. And if we're able to make solo tackles, then it gives our more rangy players the ability to make plays.
Oh, certainly. I think even beyond just simply the tackles, right? A dominant tackle is easier to counter ruck. It just is. And I think that when we want to take, when we, like we say, with these little moments, every contact situation is a moment when tackler meets ball carrier. And our ability to generate discomfort in that situation, we see that they miss tackles. They're probably, I'm seeing they don't really track, they have handling errors as a whole, but I would love to see counted knock-ons. Some things that, if I were to look at the stat sheet, That
was sort of surprising that they don't just look at, that they don't put knock-ons out there, considering how many penalties I've seen from knock-ons.
Right.
Right.
Well, I would like to see total penalties. And this is for the World Rugby folks, if you guys ever see this. I guess my professional background, I've done a lot of quantitative analysis. This format looks nice, very nice, and has some great information. Just give us somewhere we can have access to where it's viewed in a table. It makes things a lot easier. So we compare one person to another in a much easier
way. The graphics are great, but give me the box score.
Right. And I know it's back there in XML somewhere, and if you let me get back there, I can query it. But it's it takes more time for us to make these discussions.
It's like because you look at the
shout out to World Rugby,
because you look at the stat line. I mean, the only way to look up really individual stuff is scoring,
right?
Unless you go to individual stats through a different section. So that's an interface thing that could be fixed real quick. Not too hard. It's another web page. And on that server, it's probably nothing.
Oh God, no, it's nothing. I mean, I'm wondering how much they're paying to host hard host versus the cloud and all that stuff. Enough professional stuff for my management consultant life. But the ability, one thing because also this is for our learning how we prepare, right? Statistics are eventually going to start driving how players prepare. And I think that's one of the things that I would love to teach lower. Growing up playing any other sport in the US, we understand how statistics affect how we prepare for different things. I was a fullback and middle linebacker in high school. So I knew the ratio of run plays to pass plays for every team that I played because I had to call the defenses.
So, I mean, that's where, we were discussing before we went, full into this. So rugby, as far as I can tell, is the only sport that is using GPS pods to track. So that's how they get meters made, and all that stuff. Mm-hmm. And there's on all the game kit, there's this little pocket where this GPS node goes in between your shoulder blades, just goes back there. But during practice, I guess, they're starting to wear them during practice in soccer. So I guess someone
Makes
said,
sense.
Is Ronaldo wearing a bra or something? But it's a little thing.
I've seen them. Yep.
Yeah. And then there's in practice, they also wear a heart rate monitor.
Yep.
So they have all these metrics. And so that's how they control work rate during practice. But rugby started this. Mm-hmm. And so, I think it's rugby, we're gathering all the stats. We're just not at the point where, American baseball and American football is in the sport because I would say purely because of when professionalism hit.
Right.
That, NFL was using all these, and baseball were using all these stats in the 80s before there was internet.
Right.
People were playing fantasy baseball, mm-hmm. Literally on the whiteboard. Yeah. And it was that. That's how all that got started. And now, guess what? There's fantasy professional rugby.
Yep.
So we're going to see, with that industry starting, we're going to see a lot more stats probably in the next 3 years. I wouldn't even say 5 years because I think that we're just the other sports have so many metrics in them that it's just going to bleed over and it's going to be adapted to.
Well, exactly. And we're right now we're figuring out which ones are relevant. In terms of what the fans want to know, what analysts want to know. One of my favorite sites that has a great sort of analyst, no frills sort of approach to it is basketballreference.com.
Oh, that's that one, and for me, Baseball Reference.
Yep,
those
fantastic.
And the guys who put that together, bless them.
Right? Brilliant. No, and simple though. Simple and effective. Easy export, all that stuff. I would love to have something like that for anything like this for rugby. Even I don't care if we only have 5 years of stats. Cool. Get it started, get it rolling. Eventually, that's going to pay dividends for how we look at the sport. Because especially in the U.S., we're very who's good sort of people. And how do you know? And we have to be able to speak to something to say that this was a good player that stands out in some way that we can then measure that sort of goodness in some way. Doesn't mean that that's necessarily part of the ethos of rugby because the ethos of rugby is more units and groups. But I think that for it to catch fire with the average sports nut in the U.S., people are that discussion is going to have to become available.
I think, we had that last attempt at a professional league. I think this next attempt should start.
Right.
I think it lasts more than a year. Mm-hmm. It's just things are going to get Americanized.
Yeah, which is okay.
I'm fine with me.
I'm good with it.
So
yeah, I'm not either. Yeah. I'm fine with it.
So, so that's where I think stats and specifically some of these killers that you have on the Black Ferns. So Portia Woodman. Salisha Winiata.
Oh, man.
And their captain, I butchered her name today. I think it's Fiao.
Fiamasili?
Famasili. So I gotta say it fast, not Famacili. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I was like trying to figure it out phonetically, and I'm like, I'm gonna screw this Islander
I think she's another four World Cup person.
She's crazy. So her background, for all those that want to know, she's a cop,
mm-hmm.
and
her and Winiata.
Yeah. So
both of them.
So you've got police women on this team, and they're just so you got. I mean, and I'm just mentioning small names because you also have Teresa Fitzpatrick on the bench and Becky Wood. I could say all 23, to be honest. Like all 23 names.
Yeah, this is the talented side.
Like you could take those 8 on the bench and put them up front, and I don't think you're not really losing much. It's just how things settle down, because they are right now, they're not the best in the world because they don't own the Rayburn Shield,
Yeah.
But they might have the chance.
Well, it's really kind of interesting because I'm looking at the some of their other matches, right? That's one of the advantages that that coming into this match for the U.S., New Zealand really wasn't tested except for the early stages against Wales.
Yeah.
So
that was an interesting match. First 20 minutes. I didn't see that the first 20 minutes until after the fact. Because the one thing about this format that I have beef with.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I could deal with this format. You throw in, another pool, you run everything, on the same day,
mm-hmm.
but don't have games overlapping.
Isn't that nuts?
Because I'm trying to, everyone's trying to, get all their rugby in and get all their work in, and trying to watch, as Gift, he was watching 3 games at once. I was like, what are you doing?
I had 2 screens, the Chromecast on the TV ahead. Man, like what?
So
tough.
I mean, you can play all the games on the same day. I don't care. Just don't overlap them, please.
That was rough. That was so rough. Like, I guess hey, shout out to whoever organizes these things. Come on, man. Come on, son.
Yeah,
Help us out.
I mean, so I didn't catch that until afterwards, and it was just that was interesting. You look at it was, I wouldn't say it was talent takes over, but after 20 minutes, talent took over in that match. Mm-hmm. But again, guess who won the turnover battle?
I'm about to pull it up now. Was it Wales?
Yeah. 10-7.
Yep. So
that's where the one match they did win turnover battle, which is obvious, is Hong Kong. It was rough. But not I wanted to have been Hong Kong.
You know what the real thing is, turnovers in our own half.
Yeah.
That's if you give that to New Zealand, they will kill you.
Yeah.
That's the end, because I'm looking, turnovers in Wales' own half and the Welsh own half 10. And they won 10 turnovers. So they undid all of their good work by doing bad work in their own end.
Yeah.
Same thing with Canada. Canada won more turnovers, but had more turnovers in their own end.
Yeah.
So that should tell us what's going on there.
Yeah.
If we're secure with the ball in our half, if we use Cheta's rocket to get onto the other side of the field, New Zealand hasn't struck me as a tactical kicking side. Not that they can't.
I mean, I haven't seen it, but we've got 4 kickers, in our back line. We've got, Kimber, then we've got Alev, then we've got Nicole, and then we've got Cheta. Like,
they're all kinds of feet.
Like they can all boot the ball. Mm-hmm. So I'm not really, if Pete decides to go that way, I don't know what his game plan would be. I know that
I'll tell you what my game plan would be right now. So, and it's the old South Africa model. Let's play the line out. Fight like hell at the breakdowns. Create your space where you can have it, and then play on their end of the field. Pressure their line out. force them to win their lineouts, win them under pressure, pressure them defensively, then force them into bad situations until they turn over, or you create enough phases in their end where they break. And New Zealand misses a high enough percentage of their tackles for me to have faith in that will happen. That's the way I see it. I would play our line out. Our lineouts would have to be tight though. Shout out to Sam Pankey and Kat Augustin. We need tight throws. We need to make the pressure ones, and on defense, we really need to contest. Once again, we can't let them be comfortable with their set pieces. Yeah. We got to make them make the perfect throw. We'll get some overthrows, some not straights, and then have Kate Zachary and co ready to pounce and move the ball wide. We can play New Zealand's game against them in that sense. I mean, we are as dangerous a side, if not more dangerous, on the aggregate in the back line than New Zealand is. When we take the sum of our women, talent and ability within space, two wings, our entire back three, our centers, we can attack very well. To the point that Kimber can move the ball. That's all she has to do.
If you are smart with your kick, I haven't seen it, but if we do it right, we could kick that thing down the field, and Kris or Naya can chase, and they can score because they've got the wheels.
Mm-hmm. Wheels and the hands. These people are gamers around the ball, and I think that's something we take advantage of.
So I think that's definitely something we can exploit, because they didn't really see that kind of game plan against them. So if you haven't seen that kind of game plan, you might as well try it.
Right.
And see where we go. And, rugby is so player centric on the field. This is where, I'm very concerned about who we select as the next men's Eagles coach. And I think Pete, the way for as much as, I have been critical of his player selection overall, but they've gone out and performed. So, most of that really, although I have been critical, he succeeded. So I'm not really he's done what he aimed to do. So, gold star. You get to come home. You made the choices, and we went out and won games, and we're here. So, but
that's the thing. I guess we in the space, because we also know so many of these folks in some capacity, that I think we can't that's why I made that call I did against England. I'm like, look, we're gonna be wrong, but there has to be a discourse and discussion.
Yeah. The way he coaches, it's very professional. Extremely. And I like it, because we had a previous men's Eagles coach that did not coach in, I wouldn't say players coach, but player centric, because you go to the captain's run, sometimes the coach is on the field running things, and sometimes the coach is in the box just jotting notes, and he'll talk to the captain, which is how Mitchell coached. And that's how I liked him a lot, because he treated our men as professionals.
Like adults.
And that's that is one thing I can say. I look at Pete and I go, you're treating them like professionals, and you're making them make decisions on the field. But
and live and die by them.
But guess what? They're at Ulster. Yeah, he's going to be in the booth. But you have an assistant on the ground, and you can send in your signals and all that fun stuff, because it's, to an extent, it's just like football. They're still talking on the mic, but it's a fluid motion sport, so you have to be able to communicate. The assistant on the field has to be able to say, hey, Naya, hey, Kris, make this adjustment, and then they passed it along. So it's, again, it's everything's all your adjustments have to be player centric. And he has developed them to be able to do that, which is, not a lot of coaches in any sport can do that effectively.
Fair enough.
So I think I've said all I want about the Black Ferns, to be honest. Looking at not really our starting 15, because this is basically it. I mean, this team has pretty much stayed the same except for a few exceptions in the second match. And then in the third match, we had Nick James come up. And in this match, what we've seen is I've been wanting to see Tess Fury take the field as soon as she replaced Anna Karen Pedraza, because she can play. And she has –
What was the story behind that? I just saw the one was being switched. I didn't know what happened. She get hurt or something? I have no idea.
I mean, I heard some things, but it's not really –
Oh.
It's just I mean, she's young, and sometimes pressure gets to a young player. I mean, it was a
little bit too big.
She was a junior All-American.
Right.
I think just turned 20, maybe not. Maybe she's like still 19 and a half or something. And she got selected on merit, and then, just a little big.
All right. Couldn't keep it together. She wasn't there yet.
With the way World Rugby changed everything up, the last World Cup, you could have a training squad of 36, and you could take all 36 with you, and then it pared down to 28 and 23. Basically you would have it was 30, so you took all 36, and then you had six women and 6 dudes at the time out there just staying fit, not practicing. They were your injury replacements. You brought them. Well, this World Cup couldn't even do that. It was the way it is now, and I think it's the same for the men. Training squad of 30. On the week of the first match, your squad has to be 28 players, and you can only bring in people if injuries happen, so they can't even be there. And I thought it was weird at the beginning because I was trying to figure it out. But I looked at the rules. I looked at all the other sides. It's 28. So I think World Rugby made some small bad decisions on that rule for at least. I can understand, summer tour, reduced side, all that stuff. But it's the World Cup. When you go to, this portion, like in baseball, they expand the roster deep in the playoffs.
Right. Which
is different to, like, some sports aren't like that, but at the end, you expand the roster because, guys aren't fit and they might need to rest.
Right.
So, and so I think that's a World Rugby criticism. And, Pete didn't hit on that when he got interviewed before the England match.
In the Telegraph, yeah.
Telegraph. And he was pretty critical. And you know what? I could get more critical than he could.
Right.
I mean,
I thought he was diplomatic.
Yeah, I thought he was nice. I mean, to me, the format and the way they have it set up, the old men that sit on the council just they aren't really paying mind because we currently don't have a woman on the World Rugby Council.
Yep.
And guess who represents 40% of the game globally? And the growth rate of the game, like,
it's women,
will surpass the men's very fast. Is women. Yeah. Like women's rugby has been like on this since the 80s. So I think a woman, a lady, depending on if she's British, because I forget her name, but the woman who was one of the founders, the stakeholders of the Red Roses, is on the RFU's board. So I think Nigel might have some things to answer for after this World Cup.
Here's hoping, because that's embarrassing.
Yeah.
Like I always tell folks, and it's kind of like a organizational aside. if your goal is to grow the game, then as a governing body, what you're managing is people's experience with the game. And are we honest in saying, okay, this is a game for everybody, it's inclusive, blah, blah, blah? Are we really being serious when we say that? Are we really being serious? If we look at the investment and accountability, are we really holding ourselves accountable for the experience that these women are having with our sport? I want folks to at home and think about that. Because if we're going to talk about inclusion, I mean, it's nice to talk about, but how do you make people feel welcome? You treat them good when they're here. And that's the treat them like their money is green. Their time is worth it, and that their commitment is of value to the organization, stakeholders.
So, I mean, this is where, like you said, treat them like your money is green. So I lived in El Paso, played there for 3 years. That's where I started the game. And, you go to a bunch of different places, unless you have tons of money, you're not getting in certain places like in a T-shirt and flip-flops. But in El Paso, guess what? It's the summer and it's hot.
Right.
And I went into – there's 2 5-star restaurants, and my girlfriend and I, went into one of them. And we dressed up, decently. And I'm sitting there and I'm going, why is that guy in like a V-neck T-shirt, V-neck shirt? But you know what? As long as you're good for your money,
right?
That's it. Like, and the women have been good for their money, if not better than their money.
Oh yeah, we've been getting a deal. Let's keep it. Like, I mean, right now they're paying for the deficit that the men ran up.
Yeah.
We're balancing the checkbook on their back, which is bullshit.
Yeah.
But that's but we're not going to invest in helping them make it back.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
Yeah. So, not really. I mean, we could talk about politics. I mean,
governance again.
But so players that will lift. Sam Pankey, she'll slide in at hooker for Catherine Augustin. Hope Rogers, she's a great story.
She's a spark.
6 months ago, you wouldn't have thought, like, there was no chance she was going to be here. She was coming off injury that was really tough, and she got herself fit. And
as a front row, that's not a small task. I mean, knee injuries are serious for us.
And so her story is like, if that's not motivation, then I don't know what is. Nick James, she provided a lift when she came in. I honestly thought she should have come in earlier, but
me too.
I mean, that's just for a variety of reasons. I thought she should have come in earlier. Then we've got the one I mentioned earlier that I want to see out there is Tess Fury. Jess Wooden. She played for like the last 3 or 4 minutes against England. Honestly, I'd like to see her, Tess Fury and Jess Wooden, eat up some minutes. Not to say that, who they replace don't have the fitness. No, I want them to play like out of their mind.
Impact,
I want them to be impactful so that you can then use the fresh legs to take it over the top. That's what I want to see. And, our boys at Ladbrokes put the line at -23. And like I said with the England one, I thought that's too high. I think a good line for this would be, if they did their homework, would be -15. And that's where I'm like, all bets are off. Yeah. Because that's 2 mistakes. That's 2 mistakes. And we're within 1. So the holes are there with the Ferns, but we can't give them holes.
No.
Because they will eat.
Yeah, I would say let's not give them the ball. Let's make them tackle us 200 times and miss 50. That's have them eat that up. They'll tackle well. They will tackle well, and some of them are very strong on the ground. The fly half 10, she's very good over the ball, and I think that's something that they've taken advantage of. the ability that people will typically attack that 10 channel, but she being there, she hits like a hooker and is just as good over the ball. So that's they have the luxury of not having to pay as much attention to that channel as a unit than most teams do. But other than that, though, like you say, eat. Like, I think that every opportunity that we have is something that we'll take. And with belief, with confidence. I mean, we're Americans. We're out here. We are not a overly humble group of people. And we don't need to be. That's never been our sports history. That's just not us. And if we're going to if rugby is going to get its American identity, there has to be a bit of swagger about it. That not the idea, not being an ass, but more in terms of the belief that we belong here, and if you don't handle your business, we're taking your lunch. That's the attitude that has to be there. I don't care if it's New Zealand. I don't care if it's this New Zealand or the New Zealand won it the first time they won it. I don't care if it's the All Blacks themselves. That you have to have a level of belief that because who you play for and what you've done to get there is enough. That's why I tell y'all that there's no moment that's too big for you as individuals because of who you play with. So you have to believe it. And that's why I said people said, when I said Eagles by 5 against England, okay, I was wrong. So what? Eagles by 5 again.
Hey, let's go.
And that's it.
Let's go.
And that's what I want us to get to. We don't owe anybody who's been playing rugby, quote unquote, longer than us shit. So let's finally get that chip on our shoulder.
I mean,
good portion of our women are professionals.
This is where we talked about, the beginnings of women's rugby, and the last time we were on together, talking about governance.
Mm-hmm.
We have achieved success that we were not pegged to do this time.
Mm-hmm.
And guess what? This is where we should be.
Exactly.
We should not have ever fallen that is a testament to the governance portion, because what we could have been when we did that in 91 and then went back to the finals several years in a row.
Right. That's dominance. If you think about it.
This is where we should be.
Mm-hmm.
This is where we belong. And it's on the union to figure it out.
Yeah.
And if they come out and say, hey, look at what they were able to do without all this support, so we're just not gonna, we're just gonna leave it be. I'm gonna have gripes. And a lot of people are gonna have gripes, because if we go back to basically 1991, where the women funded everything on their own and they went out and did this without the union.
Right.
And they went out and won it. And then they get left alone. They don't go to the White House or anything.
Nothing.
If they win, we go out and do our thing. We get it done. Guess what? It should be like any gold medal team.
I agree. Give them their parade.
They need to, there's this great article in the Tallahassean, I think it was. And, Florida State, another great women's rugby college. They've fallen on some tough times, but they put out, six women that were on that 91 team.
Isn't that something?
And they talked about, how they came home and they thought it was going to be big. If they just won the World Cup. And the union didn't even pay no mind. There was nothing in the press. They had to go find something, and it was just, they were just let alone. So, people talk about equality of importance, equality of funding. Guess what? I don't care about that, because they are the winningest of our national sides. Yeah. So what does that say? Proportionally, they need to get as much as the men. The men are going to play more tests because World Rugby says blah, blah, blah. Well, guess what? We need to go the men need to play as many tests as they need to play. They do. Like, I'm not saying – because I remember reading in the Congress minutes from February, they said, yeah, we could get them another test, but we'd have to take away a men's test, and it would jeopardize our grants from World Rugby. And I said to myself, what?
Right.
So you're going to jeopardize one program just so that you don't lose some money, because this is the richest country in the world, and the fact that the brand has not been managed.
Disgusting.
To the point where, because sponsorship and events should be funding the union, and what is funding the union is our SIP dues, which are due in 10 days.
Yep.
So our women are in the semifinals. Guess what that means? We're back to where we should be for the first time in 20 years. And we need to stay. And when they come back, the people that lead the union need to figure the F out so that we stay here. And it means that they need to go find the money. I don't care if it's from their own paycheck. I don't care if it's from their own checkbook.
Me either.
Or if it's from a major American company that wants to sponsor it. They need to figure out how to sell it. They need to tell our story, because guess what?
It's a good story.
It's a great story. Mm-hmm. It's a great story. We talk about the Olympics and how we won 2 gold medals because people decided not to show up. Hey, the Americans are playing. No. I mean, we beat France the first year. The second time, well, if you don't want to show up, I'm going to win. That's all I got to say. And then the women go out and they're the most dominant, rugby side for, almost 10 years from 85 to 90. From 85 to 95, without support from the union, they went out and rocked the world. And when the union, I guess, got control of women's rugby is when our elite side started to, go down. So
they were mismanaging it.
So us as fans, we got to do what we got to do, which is, we got to talk about them, we got to support them, and we got to hold the people that run this thing accountable so that they get the support.
I agree. I mean, that's it. And I mean, and do so unapologetically and very directly. I think that our women are very capable of speaking for themselves, but I love adding myself to the chorus of what they're dealing with. And like I say, and this is not just women on the national team or in the elite pool. All women in USA Rugby, you got 2 allies right here. We got your back. Because you guys make up such a large percentage of what the success is going to be in the future and currently of our union. So at some point, more people have to, get some spines about them and hold people to account for it. And that's literally the long and the short of it. Not necessarily saying that we need to reduce what the men's teams get. I don't know how that's broken down. But in reality, at least the way I grew up, I got 2 siblings. There's no way that a brother's eating and his sister isn't. That's just the way it is.
So, I mean, this goes back to, culturally, it's not just our union. So the English men, they make some stupid money. So if you were named to the side for the 12 matches, I think not everyone was named to the side. Like if you were on the Lions tour, I mean, those guys made something like they need to start a women's Lions tour.
Right, they were making bank. Like really, look,
they made so much money. It was ridiculous.
And I think it would be really lit to have the Lions and the Lionesses big spectacle.
That'd be great.
Everybody would make money.
That would be great. But English men make like 22,000 pounds
a match,
which is ridiculous. Because I didn't see the number, but I think the full contract if you were a full-time contracted player on this women's team for this 1 year that they were going to do it, it was like 40 or 50,000 pounds, and then the part-time contract was like 15,000 pounds. And I'm just,
I remember because I can't remember if Marley Packer has a full-time or a part-time, but she's a plumber. That's her job.
Yeah.
And that's how she supports herself. Like, you know,
I'm just, I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, so what happens if, these women aren't able to get onto one of those professional sides?
right?
And, how do you go from English international in the World Cup to one of those professional sides? And if none of that, if somebody doesn't, I'm going to be, somebody's head needs to roll, because there needs to be a place for that entire training squad to play if they want to play in that, in that professional league. Because guess what? They wear the rose.
Absolutely.
That's it. So, like why does an English man who is making, some of these top flight players are making like 250,000 pounds from their club.
Right. Yep.
Why should they be on a contract that gives them 22,000 pounds per match? And the women not even get,
not even close.
Not even get half that. Well, not even get a quarter 10%. Of that. Yeah. Not even approaching that. Wild. But so that's where we are. It's been a great tournament for me to watch. Like,
it's not done yet.
No, we've got tomorrow, the way it's set up, there's going to be, they're playing for the bowl and the plate and the shield. I was like, no, the plate, I think, is the third place match.
Let me see. I was looking at the draw a minute ago.
I think third place might be. Or is the third place?
It's the plate semifinal. Oh, you know what? I saw place and I thought it said plate. Yeah. So they just go by place. So there's the 11th place playoff, the 7th, and then the 5th place playoff.
Yeah. So there's a bunch of matches tomorrow that are not the semifinals, which are going to be great matchups to watch. So, like, the way this tournament is set up, yes, the whole only 4 teams get to go on. At least the rest of them get to keep playing, because our women will have played a total of 9 matches in the last year, whereas the English women will have played 17.
Yep.
At the end of this World Cup. So that gets you, when I talk about preparation and funding and doing things the right way. Canada played 8 this year. New Zealand played 8 this year. I think that's a lower number. I think they normally play 9 matches a year.
And they were high quality matches too. I mean,
England
and Canada went down there. I mean, that was serious.
Yeah. So we need to, over the next 4 years, get our women's 15s team more than, I looked at it, like we're averaging like 3 tests a year.
Yeah.
That's pathetic.
How do you blood your young bloods? Right? Young props that need to get in there, figure out, we need to get our butts kicked a little bit. Yeah. We need to get work, we have to get comfortable.
So this is where I said, hey, if I was at the RAN meetings, I would have said, hey, we need a women's ARC before we needed a B. I mean, I'm glad that they're having it. They have a 14 B championship. And another journalist, Brian Ray, great dude from Canada, has some great perspectives. I don't agree with him on this, but he said the women's game in the Americas just needs to grow a lot more. But for me, I don't care if it's dominated by the United States and Canada for a long time. It gives these I would say it's a 16 tournament. It gives those 4 other nations something to play for.
Yeah.
And eventually they will climb up, just like Brazil, Chile, and Uruguay have. Like, we haven't climbed up, but they have climbed up, and that's why we have the ARC. And so now we're getting more quality matches more often for the men, and we need to do that for the women.
Yep.
And if that means, we start an ARC or we get them in another tournament, it just needs to get done. I don't care what it is; it just needs to get done.
I think the next step will be is actually development in the Caribbean. The better those Caribbean sides get, and this is men and women, that's one of those tides that that'll help raise all boats. That
the moment the USA South Panthers aren't dominating the RAN championships is going to be a greater thing for North America's and Caribbean rugby than where we have now. I mean, we're a select side of amateurs from a region of the country.
Yep.
Is able to dominate the tournament almost year in and year out. It says a lot. But yes, I mean, if Jamaica put together a national sevens team, I mean, I know they have one, but if they got good coaching down there, like if they had an infusion of coaching, they'd look like the Blitz box.
Oh yeah. No, I mean, I would say a 4-year plan and like a $500,000 budget, and you have them breaking into the world circuit. Because these are folks that you identify them at 16, and you begin their development process 5-year plan. About 40 guys, 40 girls, 40 women, and take them, develop them. They pare down to about that 20 that's your pool over 5 years. Even some people flow in, some people flow out, and get them competing. That's how you start it. That's it. Now, some company there, I think maybe a hospitality company of some type, one of these big cash travel companies that have resorts all over the place. They got plenty of money. Somebody just has to bottle it and sell it. Just like we had with the Saracens match at that resort against the Islanders in the Bahamas. This is something that can happen all the time. My brother-in-law plays for the San Francisco 49ers. He went to school at Western Kentucky. One of their bowl games against Central Michigan was at Atlantis in Bahamas. So there is the ability to host these things and create these events that actually make money. So just somebody with the imagination and some of the will to do so just needs to organize that thing and get it together. And we'll see something even different in 5 years than we do now.
Yeah, I mean, so if I think, like, you look at Mexico, the Rugby Mexico's president just became the RAN president.
Really?
Yeah. So, like, they've done a lot. But I want to point this out. Like, there's like 6. I think it's like 6 dudes. I know of one because I've met this kid before. He could have played on US U20s, but he had heritage rights in Mexico. He played on the U20s, Mexico U20 team this year, and this kid is dirty. Like, he's
nice.
from El Paso. Like, there's some kids from El Paso playing on, because like we've got some nice high school rugby going on in El Paso, and this guy, like, I think there's 2 or 3 kids from El Paso playing on the Mexico U20s rugby team, and it's pretty solid. So I think with the right plan, you could see the rise of Rugby America's North, and with the right plan, there's no reason we shouldn't dominate, this region, and getting Americas on a higher playing field will get more spaces in the men's and women's World Cup. So if we have to do it ourselves, then we do it ourselves.
Right. If we grow the pie, we still get a bigger slice.
So that's what I was looking at. a thought in my head last year. I was like, well, the United States needs to be a leader in growing rugby in the Americas. If whether we hold the presidency of, the RAN Council or not, we need to do all the things that we need to get Mexico up.
Right.
Because if Mexico's on the level of Canada, that gives us another, decent opponent.
Right.
That we can flood players against. That's right there. So the better they are, the better we'll become. Because there's no reason we can't have, like a Tri-Nations type series, in addition to the ARC.
Right. Or a pseudo domestic competition where there may be two clubs in each country. From Canada down through the Caribbean, down to Brazil, like etc. 12 teams. These are cheap. These are reasonably cheap flights. I mean, 6-hour flights at most in some cases.
And you're not worrying about huge circadian rhythm shifts, but so that's the next. The next big thing is to grow America's rugby, both men and women, because there's no reason to not invest at the same right now, considering at some point women will outstrip the men in participation with this game.
Yep. And
they've earned that right. So,
agreed.
I think for me that's it, Tosan. So,
excellent. I'm about to say, would you for predictions? Bold predictions: France match and U.S. match.
So, I want to say France. I want to take France I'm going to take France and kill the spread. So I'm going to take France by a penalty. 24-21.
France by penalty? Okay.
And let's go 25-18 US.
Nice. I'm gonna go with for France. I'm also going to pick France. I'm gonna say France 27-20. Where there might be some issues with the boot there for England, but I also think that we're going to be dealing with a very motivated French side, and I think that some folks from 2014 are gonna have a classic match. I think Safi and Naya is gonna have a classic match. It's good. That match is going to be one of the sort of in the annals of rugby history of classic World Cup matches is what I'm predicting. But I see France pulling this one out to play in the final, and the other match and their opponent will be the U.S., who beat New Zealand 35-30. High scoring match. I think that
I want to see some offense. That would be exciting.
Right. I think it's going to be an exciting match to watch. It's going to be a very physical match, but like those high octane physical matches with a lot of offense that have some mistakes and slop and things like that. But it's kind of like who ends up standing at the end. Somebody might get ahead. There'll be a comeback. Depends on who goes to sleep, who wakes up. Card might make a difference, but still 35-30. Still Eagles by 5.
All right.
Haka or no Haka? All right.
I'm not worried about a Haka.
Nah.
Especially after there was a Haka like every 5 minutes during the Lions tour.
Oh yeah. That point. Yeah. It's heritage. So it's going out. It's always going to be out there. And it gets plenty of clicks. The coolest Haka I saw is actually where the Maori and the women were facing each other, and did one. They both did theirs.
Oh,
that was awesome.
Yeah, that was really cool during their Maori right before their Lions match, and then the women were in camp for the World Cup. Mm-hmm. So that was a really cool one. It lasted about. It's like the women's Haka is different, and just seeing the men just go like wild and then the women are just like,
right.
It just played off each other really well. So
it was pretty cool.
So we've got this game on 3 different spots you can watch tomorrow. NBC Sports Network.
Yes.
I don't know what the channel is. If you have Spectrum, Time Warner, Cox, DirecTV, what have you, but it is on NBC Sports Network, 9 a.m. Pacific time, 12 p.m. Eastern. It is live from Ireland. It is on the NBC Sports app. So that means it's free streaming through your computer.
Yep.
And if you had paid for gold, like Tosan and I did, it is also on NBC Gold.
Yep.
So support the Eagles. Watch them. Let's get a W.
Absolutely. I'm about to say, I'll see you guys out in cyberspace. I'm be out there talking all kinds of trash. I want to see our ladies do their thing. Our women are going to go out there and actually put some American rugby identity into this. I think we have a chance to define who we're going to be. And this is our opportunity to do that. I think, the women that came before them did a great job of sort of sparking and setting it off. Administratively, they got neglected. Well, now they said, you ain't going to neglect us anymore because we can play this game at the highest level. Can't hide it. The footage is going to be everywhere. We got people that are marketable. We got people that are entertaining. We have people that can play this game as well as anybody on this planet, and people will enjoy watching them do it. So we can't neglect them forever. So now we have that chance to really show what our expectation in the American sports market, the expectation we have of American teams. I think that these women are up for the challenge. I think they're nice and they're relaxed. They've gone through their walkthroughs. Things are smooth. They're feeling confident. We have some great matchups that are going to show some things. Some great competition's going to be there. I can't wait to see how. Looking at the roster for the USA women, I believe they have. Yep. Kris Thomas is at 11. So that means it's Naya and Portia head to head. That's going to be a battle.
That's going to be there's the matchups in the back line are really exciting.
Aren't they?
They are.
Kelter and Brazier. Woo.
So Stacey Walker and Heverland, and then Kris Thomas against Renee Wycliffe, and Celicia Winiata against Cheta Emba. Like they're all like that's gonna be a show.
Right. We have plenty to look forward to, and you know what? Folks at home, talk about it. I'm telling you, pick a favorite. You might not know much about her. Just follow her, see what she's doing while she's and just be a fan. Just like we do. That's what we do when we watch sports. And talk about it, share about it. If they mess up, get pissed off. That's what we do. Other than that, hey, I'm gonna see you guys out in cyberspace. I know the Strobros will too. Check out his Facebook page. It's Earful of Dirt.
Yep, Earful of Dirt.
His podcast
about professional rugby in the United States.
Yep, I think that's going to be a good one. Also, look out for the next episode of the Propcast coming out soon. Val Rugby 1v1. Got 2 new episodes up there for you now. Oh, and yes, there is another pump-up video coming out tomorrow morning. I didn't forget. All right. See y'all out in cyberspace, and go Eagles by 5.
7.
Yeah, there you go.